Have people share their ideas in an email with the group. So the quiet ones have to share ideas. Just listen to them in advance of the meeting. So it will allow more ideas, working your way through a problem. Put as many ideas in play, and the more the better. And this one study's been done. If you put 15, 20 ideas in play, you get 2 or 3 good ones. If you put 50 or 100 in play, now you get 20 or 30. Come back to it. Don't try to do it immediately. Sleep on it. Take a shower, go for a walk.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Dan Steininger. And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps get the word out to great leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself. Please help me welcome Dan with the secret sauce of creativity. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
I was educated at a very good law school on the East Coast. I came back to my hometown in Milwaukee, practiced law for about a decade, became the CEO of one of my clients, a large financial institution, grew that by a couple billion. Also headed up the Port of Milwaukee. We made that the fastest growing port on the Great Lakes. So that's my business career, jumped out of there. And now I teach innovation. I consult with companies, helping them learn how to be creative and innovative, because that's the world we all live in. In my youth, in Milwaukee, I would catch a train and go out to Glacier National Park, where I worked in the summers. Wow. Now, Glacier National Park, they call it the crown jewel of the Rocky Mountains. So it's an overnight train trip, and you get up in the morning, you're coming across the plains of eastern Montana, and suddenly you see the Rocky Mountains emerging out of the plains, and they are spectacular. Wow. And you get out on the platform, and it's like a John Denver moment. You're smelling clean air and Rocky Mountain air and all that sort of stuff. And it's a fantastic experience. But after about 2 weeks of being there, I'm reading the journals of Lewis and Clark. When they saw the Rocky Mountains, they're like, oh, Lord, this is the barrier between us and getting to the Pacific. And ironically, it was a woman, Sacagawea, an Indian, who helped them navigate around those mountains. So the books I write, I talk about mountains, because mountains are those problems and opportunities that we all have in our life, personally and professionally. Yeah. And how do you deal with a mountain, a problem? You need creativity. So they got a woman to get them through it. You go through a mountain pass, you take switchbacks. So your listening audience, why to stay tuned? If you have a problem, personally and professionally, and particular business, I promise you're going to get some tips today that will really, really help you.
I want to get into, because you have this amazing book, and I want to talk about, the title is Conquering Your Mountains. And I want to kind of start there. What was the inspiration of writing this book and why? But then I want you to go into, the aspect of how can we maneuver through life, through mountains, in a creative and innovative way? Because that's somebody right now listening. Mountains, creative, mountains, innovation, that don't even mix together. So show us and help us navigate through this.
Cedric, you're very perceptive. You went right to the heart of things. So I'll tell the listeners, look, get out a pencil and paper. I'm going to give you the secret sauce of creativity. I'm going to give you some tips. And when those mountains hit you and those problems come along, follow this guideline. And I guarantee you are going to, and I promise you, hold me to it, that you are going to find some solutions that you hadn't thought of. So, and by the way, even to the brightest and the best, take Elon Musk, brilliant guys, launching SpaceX, Tesla. Guess what? He recently bought Twitter. On his own admission, it was a major mistake. Yeah. Even Steve Jobs, one of the greatest entrepreneurs of the world, most people don't know, he spent a better part of an entire year telling his engineers to go jump when they said that he should develop the iPhone. Yeah. And it's now become 45% of Apple's revenues. How can brilliant people like that make mistakes? So I'm going to give you some tips that will help all of us normal mortals navigate life. So let's go down right away, and let's start with tip number 1.
Okay.
When you're faced with your mountain, the problem, whatever it is, we Americans have a tendency to want to quick jump to a solution. So, and I have a good friend who wrote a book. It's called, and he's head of one of the big companies that he grew. It's called Americans, shoot, ready, aim. We jump right away to trying to quick solutions. That's not what I want you to do. The first thing you need to do is embrace uncertainty. Say, I got a problem. I got a mountain. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to spend some time trying to understand the problem. Um, and so that's important because we as Americans want to immediately do it. And I'll tell you, good example. It's sort of scary to think about this in leadership. When I became CEO of this financial institution, I had never run a business before. I had friends at the Harvard Business School. I went to Boston University Law School.
Mm.
I didn't want to really be in business. So I remember meeting with 11 vice presidents at the very first meeting, and we're going around the room introducing ourselves. And then finally someone said, Dan, what's our strategic plan? And I said, I don't know what a strategic plan is. Now, you wouldn't know what they were thinking. We got a live one. But the point is, once they realized I was serious, they said, hey, if we're going to have one, I'm going to need you to do it. And they began to realize I'm not some egomaniac. I'm going to share. We're going to work on this together. So the number one thing, embrace uncertainty and spend the time to understand the causes of the problem. Now, and that's what's important. It takes some humility. But there's an advantage that once you understand the problem better. Now, you yourself may have contributed to the problem. So that may be part of the problem. So what you need to do is begin by doing, if you ever seen little kids, the dad or mom, they ask you a question and you answer and they'll say, oh, but why? And they keep asking why. Oh, Dad, can we have a monkey? Well, no, we have a monkey. Well, why can't we have a monkey? So the first thing you need to do is the 5 whys. Sit down and ask yourself, why, what caused this? How did I get into this mess? Whether you were fired or there was some terrible medical tragedy, whatever it is, or you made a mistake at work, what are the causes of it? Take the time to understand the problem. And that's not easy to do, but if you do it, really great leaders, and I didn't make this up, Adam Grant in a recent book, Think Again, said, great leaders have confident humility. They're confident we'll get to an answer, but we're humble enough to say, I don't know the answer. I need everyone on this team to help me. So that's tip number 1. And in life too, I always say it can be very helpful to you personally. I think there's at least 5 times in my life that I have almost met the Grim Reaper. I mean, in Africa, I was way up country teaching at school, these kids not long after independence. And they were actually learning in English. I could speak Swahili, learning English. But I ended up getting malaria. I didn't even know what I had. Wow. But there was no hospitals or doctors anywhere near us. So you could die quickly of malaria. So I really had to get creative and understand the problem and then realize I got to find some options. So I ended up locating a hospital mission, or not a hospital, just a mission. Went there and there were some Italian nuns. They couldn't speak any English. But how I got them to look at me and figured out. So one of those nuns figured out, you got malaria. She used the word malaria. That's all I remember. She got out a needle and gave me a needle. And by the next day, I'd broken most of the fever. Jeez. So the point is that I've faced the Grim Reaper enough in my life to say, tips I'm giving you will work. So once you've got those facts out there, as to what you're facing, how you got in this, now what you do is you put them in priority. Let me give you a good example. Let's say you got to get somewhere and you get in your car and it won't start. Now, at that point, you need to take the time to understand the problem. So is there enough gas in the tank? Maybe I should open the hood and see if the distributor cap came off. I mean, do I have put the right key in my pocket? I'll go through your whole list. And then once you decide, you're looking at all the causes and you decide, what's the biggest contributor? And then you look at the gas tank and it's empty. That's called the Pareto chart. You put in order the causes. And when you see the gas tank's empty, you know what you need to focus on. I need to go get gas. So I'm either going to take a Uber or I'll call AAA. But so put the problem causes in order. And take some time, but figure that out. Because now you know where to begin solving the problem. Whatever the problem, like you're dealing with hunger. Okay, so do I run around the streets just handing out food? Do I stand up? Okay, we need a place where people go. We need a way people contribute. You took the time to understand how to solve a hunger problem. Instead of running around, food everywhere, you figured out what system would actually work to help provide people, not only when they're hungry, but when future catastrophes occur.
Yeah.
So that's a well thought plan, Cedric. You do this naturally, so you're obviously pretty creative. So, so anyhow, so one of the things you'll find out when you do this standing back, I mean, you may have been fired and you're mad, but who knows? You may, if you reflect, maybe I was the problem. You know, it's hard to blame ourselves. But I'll tell you a true story. When I was in law school, I'm researching a case out of the San Francisco area. It was reported in the Federal Reporter. This was a case that kept in court. Japan Airlines flies into the San Francisco airport. It's right on the San Francisco Bay. So it was Japan Airlines was flown in. The captain was Captain Oso, O-S-O. It was his name. He flew into the airport. It's on the bay and brought the plane in about a mile short of the runway, actually in the bay. The passengers, it was such a nice landing, did not know they were in the water until they looked out the window and saw sailboats going by.
Wow.
Now, the plane eventually sank, but no one lost their lives. And so a few months later, the FAA is starting the investigation. And Captain Osa's brought in and, would you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but God, so help you God?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Captain Osa, we're going to do a 6-month investigation. We'll find out the causes, and at the end of it, we'll assess blame. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. So Captain Osa, they asked, what in your mind was the cause of this accident? And there was a long pause, and Captain Oso said, how you Americans say it, Captain Oso, screw up. 15 minutes, the hearing was over. I mean, I tell that story only because everybody in America is worried about blame. Well, sometimes if it's your fault, you may have said, well, maybe there's something I can do different.
Absolutely.
So be very honest in dealing with that. So I give that example. And by the way, I say this just because I do this. I'm at a point in my life, I help others. If you're trying to if you have trouble following this, you want to ask me some questions, tell listeners just go to LinkedIn and go Dan. It's so easy. My first name's Dan and last name's Steininger. Think of a beer stein, Stein, and then add Inger at the end, Steininger. Send me a LinkedIn, and I won't cost you anything, but I'm happy to remind you what you need to do. So, okay, once you've got those issues in order of problems that need to be solved, just like you did with hunger. And it may be that right now your listeners think, should I change my job? I wish I had more pay, or I'm burned out, or I'd like to travel more. Again, find out what the problem cause is, then you can do something. Now we're at tip number 3. Tip number 3 is really important. It's called the ideation. Now we've all heard about ideation. The problem is in America, it's done very poorly. You get in a room with a team at work and everybody's talking about their ideas and what they should do. Well, guess what? The loudest in the room tend to get all the oxygen. Now, and let me give you an example of why that's a problem. Harvard does this study in their business school every year of you're given a hypothetical. Your plane crashes, you're in northern Iceland or some remote area of Alaska. You've got only a few hours before the plane sinks to gather everything from that airplane to survive. And they video this thing and then they play it afterwards to watch. So they videoed this hypothetical and they noticed one of the students at that meeting wasn't saying anything because they had listed the 10 things they needed to survive. And finally they turned to him and said, we noticed you didn't say a word. And he said, yeah, I know. And they said, why not? Well, I'm kind of shy. And I just don't like to talk up in a group. And then they said, well, what do you think of the list we have? And he said, oh, you won't survive 24 hours. And he said, why? He said, I was raised in the backwoods of Alaska. I know what you need to survive. And it ain't what you picked. So half of America, you're more extroverted, so am I, but half of America are introverts. They don't want to speak up in meetings. Wow. So one of the things, if you're in a business context, have people share their ideas in an email with the group. So the quiet ones have to share ideas. Everyone has to listen to them in advance of the meeting. So it will allow more ideas. And of course, there's so many sources of ideas from Google to our life experiences. But the most important is as you do working your way through a problem, put as many ideas in play. And the more the better. And this one study has been done. If you put, let's say, 15, 20 ideas in play, you get 2 or 3 good ones. If you put 50 or 100 in play, now you get 20 or 30. So the more, and put Post-its up on the refrigerator, come back to it. Don't try to do it immediately. Sleep on it. Take a shower. Go for a walk, as Steve Jobs used to do. Just do things that will help you think of ideas. Another tip, and as part of this, to get new ideas, use humor. And what humor does, the audience is listening to their left brain. That's where we learn language and mathematics and all that. Yeah. Humor moves you from your analytical brain to the right side of your brain, which is the sorts of creativity, where creativity comes from, music, artistry, all that stuff. If you're in a meeting at work or in your home and you're thinking, come watch some YouTube clips. There's so much funny stuff out there to get you relaxed, thinking creatively.
Yeah.
And so build humor into your sessions in which you trying to think of great ideas. And so that will help you come up with new and different ideas. Talk to customers, talk to potential customers, as I'm sure you did in developing your strategy to relieve hunger in Houston. You're in the middle of an experiment right now, aren't you, Cedric?
Yes.
And you don't know where it's going to go, but you're honest enough to say, I'm still thinking, we're still developing it.
Yeah.
So ideas in play, don't evaluate them, just keep listing them till you have a lot of interesting ideas that seem good. I like you, I actually developed a nonprofit called Biz Starts. It's based in Milwaukee. It helps entrepreneurs, primarily minority entrepreneurs, because they didn't have parents in business.
Yeah.
As many of my friends, they always say they're running a business because they were born on third base. Their dad owned the business. So
Yeah.
So I ran an investment network I created a 501c3 to help minorities who don't have a lot of money to start businesses. But what I teach every entrepreneur who wants to start a business is I don't care how much you love your product. I don't care how much you think it's the greatest thing in the world. If you can't come up with customers willing to pay for it, please don't waste your time, because you're going to end up mortgaging your house, getting divorced, and ruining your life. Even when my son was a teenager wanting to be a rock star, right? I said, okay, he's practicing. He thought he's pretty good. I said, until you go on stage with a band, how do you know you're any good? And by the way, he went on to become a musician. But well, how, you got a great product. This is a great pancake or donut you make, and your friends all tell you, like, sell it. Let's see people you don't know, who are not your friends, who are not family, are willing to pay for it. If they don't burn your life up doing your dream, because your dream isn't going to work. And I'll guarantee you, you've talked to a lot of people who are hungry, they're living in vans and who knows what. You know the need. You're not making that up. So that's a really important point. Test it, find out, ask people, and prove that you can get customers. Now, in your business, what you're proposing, you will have customers.
Absolutely. Every day.
So, okay, now you've got all these ideas. There might be 15, 20, 30, 50, who knows what. How do you pick what you're going to do? That's the question. All right. So now I want everyone in the listening audience to write this down. You need to decide the criteria to judge the ideas. So let's give you a simple example, listeners. You want to buy a car. Okay. What's your biggest concern? The cost, fuel efficiency, safety? I mean, what is it you want in that car? And list those in order. Might be 5 things, whatever. And each one. So if the most important to you is the cost, that gets a 5. If it's fuel efficiency, it gets a 5. Whatever, each one gets a number based upon how important you think it is. And then what you do, you put car A, car B, car C, car D, and then you put the criteria and you put a number on each of them. If it's a Volvo safety, it's going to get a 5. And then when you finish that little chart, each car gets ranked based on your criteria, add them up, and you'll see the one that has the most numbers is probably the car you should buy. Because every time I go to a dealership, every car feels good. So whatever the problem is, you want to change jobs. Okay. Most important thing is more money. Okay. That gets a 5. Whatever it is. So put the criteria. So as you go through your ideas, you can evaluate what gets the highest rating, and that's the one you're going to put your attention, your focus on. And so sounds not very sophisticated, but nobody does it. Very few people do it. A year or two later, they've burned through cash, they've lost their house, what did I do? They didn't go through this simple exercise.
Dan, and I even see that when you were just talking about the car example. I'm listening, I'm like, man, that's why people get cars every year, because they got what they thought they wanted.
And if they had taken the time to say, what is it I really want? Because you look at every car, oh, that's a nice car, I like it. Instead of stepping back, what do I really want in that car? Let me also, and you're going to love this story. This story is a true story. When I was first in business, the professor, I listened to him, Professor Jerry Harvey. I was in the President's Organization. He was a speaker. He's a professor at George Washington University. His family, his wife's family is from Coe, Texas. Now, you probably heard of Coe, Texas. I don't know, it's not that far from Abilene. So they're all, they went to visit his wife's family, and they're on the front porch. Now, in Texas, it was a miserable hot afternoon, like it's in Phoenix today, it's 95. They had what's called the swamp cooler going. It's wet hay and a fan. They're all sitting about 4 in the afternoon, and Granddad says to the group, does anyone want to go to Abilene for dinner? And Jerry said, well, I turned to my wife, and she said, well, honey, I'll do what you want to do. And I know, well, that usually means she wants to go. In the meantime, Grandma's lacing up her shoes, and the next thing they know, they all hop in the old Granddad's Packard, and it didn't have any air conditioning. Of course, they go across the Panhandle of Texas, and you know what that's like.
Yeah.
Hot and miserable, dusty,
Yeah.
and they make it to what he called the Greasy Spoon Cafe in Abilene. So they had a dinner. It wasn't particularly good. And they all pile back in the Packard again across the Panhandle of Texas to Texas. And they're sitting on that porch again around 8 o'clock at night. And they were so miserable that no one could speak for almost an hour.
Oh, man.
Finally, someone said, whose idea was it to go to Abilene? And someone said, well, Granddad, it was your idea. And Granddad said, I didn't say we should go to Abilene. I was just throwing ideas out. So they spent the next hour. How could it? And Jerry turned to his wife and said, I thought you wanted to go. No, honey, I thought you wanted to go. And Grandma started crying. And so they spent another hour trying to figure out, how did we go a place that no one really wanted to go? Now, fast forward to the Watergate proceedings in Washington. Senator Sam Erwin, who was a graduate of my law school, Boston University, is questioning Charles Colson on the Watergate break-in. And he said, Mr. Colson, at any time prior to the break-in of the Watergate Hotel, did anyone think this is a stupid idea or say, maybe this is a dumb idea? And he said, no. What if they would have said it? We wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So we all take trips to Abilene and put in their life's work in something they love and believe in, and then crash and burn. So we have to avoid those trips to Abilene because we all take them in our lives.
Yeah.
You've got the way of evaluating which you could, and now you get to implementation. And that is something, take your time, test it. In the military, and this is true of the military, and I know the White House, sometimes if you're at work, they create what they call a murder team. You propose what you want to do, and now you have a team to shoot holes in it. And the military will do that too sometimes. They should have done it before exiting Afghanistan.
Right.
Oh, you mean people are going to shoot at our soldiers as we're leaving? So try everything you can to find out what's wrong with the idea. So those are tips, write them down. When those mountains come your way, start to apply them. I do want to share, in the time we have left, just a couple tips on living the creative life. If you're a business leader and you turn to your team, I want you to think outside the box. How's that going to happen if you're not already leading a creative life? So I'm going to give your listeners just some ideas to think about. You right when you finish this today. Number one, be curious. People who are creative are curious. If I were going to go to Houston tomorrow, I want to read about Houston. I've been in Houston, but I would want to read about it, learn more about it. What am I getting into? What are issues? You're going to take a trip. What can I find? Everything you're doing, if you're going to learn a language, what do I learn about this country? Why should I learn it? Be curious about life. Yeah. And they always say curiosity killed the cat, but it's not true. It didn't kill the cat, even though they think it did. Cats have 9 lives. So be curious about life. Anything you take on, do your homework. There's so much you can Google what you're going to do. You want to switch your career, spend some time really studying what that career would look like. I'm sure you have looked at other ways of handling hunger before you decide what you're going to do. Yeah. The next thing is, and this I want every listener to just put in their hard drive upstairs, solitude. Spend time every day in solitude. And here's why. Steve Jobs was famous for going for long walks. Every day we have this our brain up here, it's called executive function, incoming all day long. You're hearing advertising, cars are coming at you, yada, yada, yada. At night when we sleep, the executive brain turns down. And guess what? We have weird dreams because all those ideas start to hop out when your executive function up here blocks them during the day. So people say when I go for a walk, when I go for a shower, I turn off my cell phone. That turns off the executive brain and allows the creative side of you to come up with ideas. So build showers, walks, time without your cell phone on every day of your life. And that's number 2. And we've talked already about humor. Every day, I don't care, you have to look at YouTube, you have to look at TikTok, assuming it's around. TikTok's hysterical on humor. So put some humor in your life. It will help you be creative. And lastly, our emotions, and this is something that all of us go through, and you can't be a saint. All of our emotions hit us every day and they block it. So let's say somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you're enraged. How could they do that to me? They endangered me. Well, some people get so angry, they pull out a gun and shoot. And guess what? They spend the rest of their life in prison. So all of your emotions, whether it's anger, fear, I hadn't been in Phoenix till last year, and as luck would have it, last spring, they have great hiking trails around Phoenix. So in March of last year, I was hiking on one of the trails. My wife was behind me, and beautiful day in March, and I heard a rattle. Almost simultaneous to that rattle, I get bit on the back of my leg. And it felt like a mosquito bite, but then I turned around and I saw a rattlesnake go across the trail. Wow. Now I had my hiking pole, and he's sitting there looking at me like, I got you. And I wanted to take that hiking pole and whack him. But I said, I better not. We'll just let him, he had his day. Turned to my wife and I said, she called 911, told him I'd bitten by a rattlesnake. And so they're starting to send emergency vehicles. Okay, now I'm waiting for them to come. And I turned to my wife and said, I was a Boy Scout. In fact, I was an Eagle Scout. I learned you have to suck out the venom. She gave me the look like divorce first. No, I'm serious. But if I'm going to do that, I said, okay, great. But if I die, I'm going to write my funeral oration now. I died because you didn't suck out the venom. Well, she got down, true grit, John Wayne style, and sucked out some of the venom in my foot. She put water on it, and yeah. Fast forward, the emergency vehicle come, they walk me to the helicopter. My vitals were decent. And a helicopter pilot comes out, introduces himself. He said, hi, I'm Captain Kirk. I said, Captain Kirk? If you're Captain Kirk, I'm the Easter Bunny, the kind of name I have. No, I really am. So, but the second they put me on a helicopter, they brought the antivenom with them. They started putting me in me intravenously. So I'm rising up over in this helicopter over Phoenix. I'm taking pictures of my leg that's now swelling. And meantime, they're pumping antivenom in me. And then I turned to the captain. Then it really started to hurt. It hadn't hurt up till then, but what happens when the rattlesnake bites you? It kills the tissue around it, and then the pain. And you haven't felt pain like a rattlesnake bite. Jeez. He said, well, we'll give you some fentanyl. I said, fentanyl, is that killing people? He said, oh, no, we won't give you the Mexican cartel fentanyl. So we get to Banner Hospital, which is a big hospital system here, and the top toxicologist of the state visits me and said, I needed to see you because your case is unusual. I said, I don't like the sound of that. And she said, oh, no, it's good. You have less venom in you than the average rattlesnake bite. And I told her the story. And she said, well, our studies don't always show that. I said, well, you'll have to explain why I have less venom in me and how the miners and the cowboys settled this place and there was no anti-venom. Right. So anyhow, that was the end of the story. And she did remind me, and this is the point about anger. I was mad at that snake, but she said, if you would have hit that snake, I've treated guys who've been bit by the same snake 3 or 4 times. So, there's times even when you have a fearful situation or you're angry, EQ, emotional intelligence, pause, analyze it, ask yourself what's happened here, and measure your response. So those are some tips on how to deal with those emotions that impact us every day of our lives. So your audience, I promise you, they can, if they want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer some of their questions because this went pretty fast. I also have a newsletter I can give them free, two creativity tips a month, so I can send them that. It won't cost them anything. Dan Steininger, and again, think Beerstein, Stein, and then add INGER. So just go to LinkedIn. That's the best start because my profile and everything's just type in Dan, last name Steininger, Stein, like a beer sign, INGER, Steininger, and mine pop up. You can send me a message. My newsletters are on there. My posts are just click on one. And then you can just click on that. You can subscribe. My website's on there. Everything's on here. So make it so easy for your listeners. Because I really believe, having survived many times with death, having run institutions, I'm on a mission to help people in need and hurt be creative. I had students in the middle of Africa who went on to become phenomenal business leaders, college professors. One became Karita Moringi. He became the governor of a big province and helped write the Constitution for Kenya. So I'm just telling your listeners, look, we're not going to live forever, but along the route when there's tragedy or hurt or suffering, whatever it is, I'm giving you some tips. Don't get depressed. Go through anger. You're going to be upset. Then step back and follow these tips. You're going to come up with some creative solutions and go on to have an interesting and creative life, even though it looked pretty dim at one point. So there you go.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the Lead to Greatness podcast. So remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace.